Captain Ji-hoon Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the vast emptiness of space beyond Earth's solar system. This was humanity's first real journey into the unknown, their first chance to meet other intelligent life. After 200 years of searching the stars and finding nothing, they had finally developed the technology to travel faster than light. Now, 3 months into their mission, they were about to make history. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Minji Park said from her station. The navigator's fingers moved quickly across her console. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. Multiple signatures, bearing 270. "They're not natural." Ji-hoon felt his heart rate increase. "How many?" "5, sir." "They're big. Much bigger than us." Dong-woo Lee, the weapons officer, glanced up from his station. "Should I power up the defense systems?" "Not yet," Ji-hoon said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We're here to make friends, not enemies." "Minji, can you get me a visual?" The main screen flickered, and suddenly they could see them. 5 massive vessels, each one easily 3 times the size of the horizon's edge. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of crystal that caught and reflected the distant starlight. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "My God," whispered Haiwan Choi from engineering. "We're really not alone." Ji-hoon took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. Open a channel. All frequencies. Let's say hello. Minji worked her console, then nodded. Ji-hoon straightened his uniform and spoke clearly. "This is Captain Ji-hoon Kim of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace from the planet Earth. We wish to establish peaceful contact with your civilization." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the screen flickered again, and an alien face appeared. It was hard to look at directly, like staring at a prism. The creature had multiple eyes arranged in a triangular pattern, and its body seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as its ships. "Human vessel," the alien said. Its voice translated by their computers into something they could understand. "You are in violation of Galactic Council protocol. This is a restricted zone. You will depart immediately." Ji-hoon frowned. "Restricted zone? Our star charts show this area as unclaimed space. We mean no harm. We're simply exploring." "Your charts are incorrect or deliberately false," the alien said, its voice growing colder. "I am Commander Thalos of the Valorian Patrol Fleet. This zone has been marked as forbidden for 600 cycles. The fact that you claim ignorance is irrelevant. Depart now, or we will be forced to escort you out." "Wait," Ji-hoon said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a peaceful gesture. "There's been a misunderstanding. We had no knowledge of any restrictions. If you could share your navigation data with us, we can avoid any future incidents. We're new to this region of space." Thalos seemed to consider this for a moment. "New? You claim your species is new to space travel." "Yes," Ji-hoon said, relief flooding through him. Maybe they could still resolve this peacefully. This is humanity's first contact with alien life. We've only just developed faster-than-light travel. We're eager to learn about the galaxy and meet its inhabitants." The alien's expression was impossible to read, but something in its posture changed. "A new species. In a restricted zone. With weapons." Thalos leaned forward. "You expect me to believe this is coincidence?" "It's the truth," Ji-hoon insisted. "Look, we'll leave immediately if that's what you want. Just please, help us understand the rules so we don't make this mistake again." Before Thalos could respond, alarms started blaring on the horizon's edge. "Captain, one of their ships is moving toward us," Dong-woo reported. "They're charging weapons." "Hold fire," Ji-hoon ordered. "Minji, start backing us away. Slowly. Commander Thalos, we're retreating as requested. There's no need for violence." But the Valorian ships were spreading out, surrounding them. "They're boxing us in," Minji said, her voice tight with fear. Ji-hoon could see the situation spiraling out of control. "Commander Thalos, please. We'll leave. Just give us space to turn around." "You will power down your weapons first," Thalos demanded. "Then you will allow us to board and inspect your vessel. We must verify that you are what you claim to be, and not scouts for a larger invasion force." "Invasion force?" Ji-hoon said, bewildered. "We're one ship. One small ship. We're not invading anyone." Haiwan's voice came through the intercom from engineering. "Captain, they're scanning us. Deep penetration scans. Our systems are starting to glitch." Dongwu's console beeped urgently. "Sir, their weapons are fully charged now. All 5 ships. And they're still closing in." Ji-hoon had to make a decision. If they powered down their weapons, they'd be completely vulnerable. But if they didn't, the Valorians might see it as an act of aggression. "Commander Thalos, we need time to consider your request. This is first contact protocol, and we need to—" A beam of energy suddenly shot past the horizon's edge, missing them by less than 50 meters. The ship shook from the near miss. "Warning shot," Dongwu said, his hands hovering over his weapons controls. "Captain, they're targeting us." "It was an accident," Ji-hoon said desperately. "Commander Thalos, was that an accident? Please respond." But Thalos's face on the screen showed no emotion. "That was your final warning. Power down now or be destroyed." Ji-hoon felt sweat running down his back. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. "Thalos, please, we can resolve this peacefully." "We'll do whatever you ask. Just don't." Another energy beam sliced through space, this time hitting their rear shields. The horizon's edge lurched violently. Sparks flew from Minji's console, and she cried out in pain. The bridge lights flickered and went red. "Shields at 40%, Haiwan shouted from engineering. "They're not trying to warn us anymore, Captain. They're trying to disable us." Dongwu turned to face Ji-hoon, his face pale but determined. "Captain, we need to defend ourselves. If they hit us again like that, we won't have shields at all." Ji-hoon's mind raced. Everything he had been taught about first contact, about peaceful exploration, about representing humanity to the stars, all of it was falling apart. But he couldn't let his crew die. He couldn't let humanity's first voyage into the galaxy end with them being destroyed by aliens who refused to listen. "Return fire," he said quietly. "Defensive only. Target their weapon systems." Dongwu's hands moved across his console. The horizon's edge had been equipped with kinetic weapons, simple but powerful railguns that fired solid projectiles at enormous speeds. Earth scientists had designed them because they were reliable and didn't require exotic energy sources. They had no idea how they would perform against alien technology. The railguns fired with a dull thud that echoed through the ship. Ji-hoon watched on the screen as the metal slugs crossed the distance between them and the nearest Valorian ship in a fraction of a second. The projectiles hit the alien vessel's shields, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields simply vanished in a burst of light. The slugs continued through, punching into the crystalline hull of the ship. Cracks spread across its surface like a spiderweb. The ship began to break apart. "Direct hit," Dongwu said, his voice shocked. "Their shields couldn't stop it. They're designed for energy weapons, not solid projectiles." "Cease fire," Ji-hoon ordered, horrified by what had just happened. "Cease fire immediately. Minji, open a channel to Thalos." But the other Valorian ships were already moving, all of them targeting the horizon's edge with multiple weapons. Energy beams lanced through space, hammering their shields. The ship shook violently, throwing crew members against their stations. "Shields failing," Haiwan reported. We can't take much more of this. Ji-hoon's peaceful first contact had become a battle for survival. He looked at the faces of his crew, young men and women who had signed up to explore the stars, not fight a war. But they needed him to keep them alive. "Dongwu," he said, his voice hard. "Take out their weapons. Whatever it takes." The Raeldans fired again and again. Each shot found its target, tearing through alien shields like they weren't even there. 2 more Valorian ships began to break apart, their crystalline hulls shattering under the kinetic impacts. The remaining 2 ships suddenly broke formation and began to retreat. "They're running," Minji said, disbelief clear in her voice. Ji-hoon slumped in his chair, feeling sick. 3 ships destroyed. How many aliens had died? Hundreds? Thousands? Stop firing. Let them go. As the Valorian ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Ji-hoon knew that everything had changed. They had come in peace, but they were leaving as killers. Humanity's first contact with alien life had ended in violence and death. "Set course for Earth," he said quietly. "Full speed. We need to warn them. This isn't over." Minji began plotting the course home, her hands shaking. Ji-hoon stared at the debris field where the Valorian ships had been, knowing that he had just started something terrible. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning about humanity. And the message being sent wasn't about peace or cooperation. It was about fear. Lieutenant Sumin Kong stared at the data streaming across her screens. In the United Earth Defense Command Center deep beneath Geneva. 6 months had passed since the Horizon's Edge had limped home with news of the first contact disaster. 6 months of desperate preparation. 6 months of intercepting alien transmissions that they could only partially translate. But the meaning was always clear enough. The aliens were coming, and they were angry. "Admiral O, you need to see this," she called out across the command center. Admiral Taijin O walked over quickly, his face already showing the strain of too many sleepless nights. Sumin pointed at the screen. "We just picked up a massive energy signature at the edge of our long-range sensors. It's huge. Much bigger than anything we've detected before." Taijin leaned in to study the readings. "How many ships? Based on the energy output? At least 500. Maybe more. They're maintaining formation as they approach." She looked up at him. "This is it, isn't it? This is their response to what happened." Taijin nodded slowly. "Recall all ships from the outer colonies. Every military vessel, every armed transport, everything. I want them defending Earth within 48 hours. And activate all orbital defense platforms. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." On the moon, at Luna Base, engineer Ji-won Yoon was working around the clock with her team to understand the alien technology they had salvaged from the destroyed Valorian ships. The wreckage had yielded fascinating insights. The aliens relied heavily on energy shields and directed energy weapons. Their technology was elegant and advanced, built on principles Earth scientists were only beginning to understand. But there was a weakness. "Look at this," Ji-won said to her assistant, pointing at a holographic display of a shield generator. "Their shields are specifically designed to dissipate and redirect energy. That's why our railguns went right through them. They never expected solid projectiles, moving at relativistic speeds. To them, kinetic weapons are primitive, obsolete, but that's exactly why they work. So we have an advantage?" Her assistant asked hopefully. "Maybe, but they know about it now. They've had 6 months to adapt. We can't count on surprise this time." Ji-won pulled up another display, showing Earth's arsenal. "We need to think like they do. What else do we have that they'd consider too primitive to defend against?" Across the solar system, Earth's military was preparing for the largest battle in human history. Every nation had put aside old differences. Political borders that had divided humanity for thousands of years suddenly seemed irrelevant when facing an alien armada. Admiral Taijin commanded a combined fleet of 200 ships, everything humanity could put into space. Against 500 alien vessels, the odds were not good. The Galactic Council's punishment fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system 3 days later. Commander Velros, a veteran of many compliance operations, looked at the primitive solar system with something like pity. The humans had no idea what they had provoked. The Galactic Council maintained peace across 700 species. When a new species emerged and immediately committed an act of violence, the response was always the same: overwhelming force, complete submission. It was better this way, Velros believed. A short, decisive show of power would save lives in the long run. Send the surrender terms, Velros ordered. His communications officer transmitted the message toward the third planet, the one the humans called Earth. The terms were simple: disarm completely, accept council oversight, restrict themselves to their home system for the next 1,000 cycles. It was generous, really. Other aggressive species had been treated far more harshly. Admiral Taijin received the message in the command center. Lieutenant Sumin translated it for him, her voice shaking slightly as she read the demands. When she finished, the command center was silent. Everyone was waiting for the Admiral's response. Tell them no, Taijin said simply. Sir? Sumin asked. They're giving us a chance to avoid war. If we refuse, we'll be slaves, Taijin interrupted. 1,000 years confined to our own system. Our children's children's children would never see the stars. No, we didn't come this far to give up now. Send the message. Earth does not surrender. Velros was surprised when the human response came back. In his long career, he had only rarely encountered species stupid enough to fight the Council fleet. Very well, he said calmly. Advance the fleet. Pacification protocols. Try to minimize casualties, but teach them a lesson they won't forget. The Council fleet moved forward in a precise formation, a wall of ships that stretched across space. They were confident. They had technology refined over thousands of years. They had fought dozens of species and never lost. These humans, barely into space, would learn their place quickly. They didn't see the mines until it was too late. The nuclear devices had been disguised as debris, scattered throughout the outer solar system in patterns that looked natural. When the Council fleet passed through, proximity sensors triggered the detonations. Dozens of nuclear explosions blossomed in the darkness. Primitive atomic weapons that released energy in the form the alien shields were designed to handle. But there were so many of them, and they were so close. Ships that had never expected to face nuclear weapons took damage, their shields overloading from the sustained bombardment. Contact! Contact! A Vexirian captain screamed into the fleet communication channel. Nuclear detonations throughout the formation. Multiple ships reporting shield failures. Velros watched in shock as chaos erupted across his fleet. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Pacification operations were supposed to be clean, professional. Return fire. Target their orbital platforms. But before the Council fleet could organize a response, the second wave hit. Kinetic kill vehicles, thousands of them, came screaming out of the asteroid belt at tremendous speeds. These weren't even weapons in the traditional sense. They were just solid masses of metal and rock, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed and aimed at the Council fleet. The alien shields, still recharging from the nuclear assault, couldn't stop them all. Ships began to explode, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. They're barbarians. A Silithian commander shouted over the channel. They're throwing rocks at us. Rocks moving at .2 light speed, another voice corrected grimly. Shields can't handle the kinetic energy. We need to fall back and regroup. Velros refused to retreat. The Council fleet had never retreated from a primitive species. Push forward. Get into firing range and target their cities. Once they see their homeworld burning, they'll surrender. But getting into firing range meant running a gauntlet of Earth's defenses. Cyber warfare specialist Hanbiel Shin sat in a bunker in Seoul, her fingers flying across her keyboard. She had been studying the alien computer systems for months, looking for weaknesses. When the fleet entered range, she struck. Viral programs designed to exploit the very interconnectedness of the Council fleet's communication network spread from ship to ship. Some vessels lost navigation. Others had weapon systems fail at critical moments. A few simply shut down entirely, dead in space. "We're in their systems," Hanbiel reported to her commander. "I can't control them, but I can sure mess them up." The Council fleet pushed forward despite the chaos, finally getting into range of Earth. Velros ordered the bombardment to begin. Energy weapons charged, ready to rain destruction on the human cities below. This would end the battle. The humans would see their world burning, and they would surrender. But they had underestimated humanity's willingness to sacrifice. Pilot Youngji Bei had been a commercial shuttle pilot before the war. She had flown tourists from Earth to the moon and back, a peaceful job that she loved. Now she sat in the cockpit of a modified atmospheric fighter, part of a squadron that should never have been expected to fight in space. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "All units, this is Youngji," she said into her radio. "You know the mission. Those bombardment ships need to be stopped before they can fire. We're the only ones in position. We won't survive this," one of her pilots said quietly. "I know," Youngji replied. "But millions of people down there will. That has to be enough. Follow me in." The squadron of atmospheric fighters, designed only for brief operations in the upper atmosphere, pushed themselves beyond their limits. They burned through their fuel at reckless speeds, racing toward the Council bombardment ships. The aliens, focused on targeting the planet below, didn't see them coming until it was too late. Youngji picked her target, a massive vessel charging its main weapon. "For Earth," she whispered, and slammed her fighter into the ship's weapon array at full speed. The explosion was tremendous, setting off a chain reaction that destroyed the bombardment ship from within. Across the battlefield, her squadron followed her example. One by one, they sacrificed themselves, crashing into critical systems and saving millions of lives below. The Council fleet, already reeling from the human defenses, watched in horror as the suicide attacks succeeded. This was beyond anything they had expected. These humans didn't just fight back. They were willing to die to protect their home. It was terrifying. "All ships retreat," Velros finally ordered, his voice hollow. "Fall back to the rally point. We need to regroup." The Council fleet withdrew in disorder, having lost over half its vessels. They had come expecting an easy pacification operation. Instead, they had been bloodied by a species that fought with a ferocity they had never encountered. As they retreated, they broadcast new reports back to the Council. Humanity wasn't just aggressive. They were dangerous in a way the galaxy had never seen. They combined primitive tactics with desperate courage. They adapted on the fly. And worst of all, they were willing to sacrifice themselves without hesitation. In the command center, Admiral Taijin watched the alien fleet retreat on his screens. Around him, his staff was cheering, celebrating the victory. But Taijin couldn't join them. He had seen the cost. The asteroid belt colonies were devastated. Mars Colony 7 was gone. And Youngji Bei and her squadron would never come home. Lieutenant Sumin approached him quietly. "Admiral, We're intercepting transmissions from the retreating fleet. What do they say? Sumin's face was pale as she looked at her translation. They're calling for full mobilization. The Galactic Council has activated something called Protocol Extinction. Every species in their alliance is being called to war. She looked up at him. Sir, we just fought 500 ships. According to these transmissions, the Council has hundreds of thousands. Taijin felt the weight of those words. They had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. And Earth stood alone against an entire galaxy. 1 year into the war, humanity had learned to fight dirty. Commander Seojin Ro stood on the bridge of the strike carrier Indomitable, watching the Vexarian supply depot grow larger on the view screen. The depot orbited a gas giant in the Proxima sector, and it was the key to the enemy blockade that had trapped 3 human colony ships in deep space. We're in range, reported the tactical officer. The depot's shields are up, but they're not at full strength. Intel was right. They don't think we can reach this far from Earth. Seojin smiled grimly. That's their mistake. Launch the assault shuttles. Fast and quiet. By the time they realize we're here, we'll already be inside. The shuttles dropped from the Indomitable's belly, their engines cold to avoid detection. Inside one of them, Special Operations Soldier Do Yunim checked his weapon one last time. He was part of a new breed of warrior that terrified the galaxy. Human commandos had become known as the boarding demons, teams that infiltrated alien vessels and destroyed them from within. 2 minutes to breach, the pilot called back. Do Yun looked at his team. They were all young, all volunteers, all aware that boarding operations had a high casualty rate. But they also knew they were effective. Aliens who had evolved in low gravity, or with delicate bodies suited for peaceful civilizations, couldn't fight humans in close combat. Evolution had made humans tough, aggressive survivors. In the corridors of a ship, that mattered more than advanced technology. The shuttle slammed into the depot's hull, cutting torches flaring to life. Within seconds, they had burned through and were inside. The Vexarians never stood a chance. Do-Hyun's team moved through the depot like shadows, planting explosives on critical systems. The aliens tried to fight back, but their bodies weren't built for this kind of violence. Within 20 minutes, it was over. Charges set, Do-Hyun reported. Extracting now. The shuttles pulled away from the depot just as the explosives detonated. The entire structure broke apart, secondary explosions ripping through fuel stores and ammunition. The blockade was broken. The colony ships were free to escape. Back on the Indomitable, Seojin watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was how humanity fought now. Hit and run. Strike from unexpected angles. Use every advantage, no matter how brutal. The Council had thousands of ships, but they had never learned to fight like this. They followed rules and protocols. Humans just fought to win, but not everyone in the galaxy supported the war. On a trading station in neutral space, Hyun-Woo Na met secretly with a Nomari trader named Pelith. The Nomari were a peaceful species, merchants who traveled between the stars, trading goods and information. They had no love for the Council's war. You take a great risk meeting with me, Hyun-Woo said, sitting across from Pelith in a dimly lit room. If the Council finds out you're helping humans... Pelith's multiple tentacles waved in what Hyun-Woo had learned was a gesture of dismissal. Many species are tired of this war. The Council claims they fight to maintain peace, but they are destroying countless worlds to punish one species for a misunderstanding. This is not justice. Can you help us? Hyun-Woo asked. We need to know where the Council fleets are moving. Supply routes. Weak points. Anything you can tell us. Pelith slid a data chip across the table. This contains shipping manifests for the next 3 months. It will show you where the Council is sending resources, which means you can guess where their fleets will be. Use it wisely. Hyunwoo took the chip, grateful for any advantage. The Nomari intelligence was proving invaluable, giving Earth's military the ability to strike where the enemy was weak. It wasn't much, but in a war against overwhelming odds, every advantage mattered. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Soo-young Park was making breakthroughs that would change the war. She had been studying the alien technology salvaged from dozens of destroyed ships, looking for ways to adapt it to human needs. Most of it was too complex, too dependent on exotic materials Earth couldn't produce. But some of it could be modified. "Look at this," she said excitedly to her team, pulling up a holographic display. "I've figured out how to combine their energy shields with our kinetic countermeasures. We create a dual-layer defense. The energy shield handles directed energy weapons. Behind it, a secondary screen of electromagnetically suspended armor plates catches kinetic projectiles. It's not as elegant as pure alien tech, but it works." The new hybrid shields were installed on the latest warships coming out of Earth's orbital shipyards. Ships like the ones Captain Minho Cha commanded in the Proxima sector. When the Council launched a major offensive to recapture the region, Minho was ready with a strategy that would shock the entire galaxy. "They're coming in force," his tactical officer reported. 200 ships moving in standard formation. "They expect us to retreat." Minho studied the holographic display, watching the enemy fleet advance. Behind them was a star, a young yellow sun similar to Earth's. He had studied this star for weeks, calculating gravitational fields and orbital mechanics. Now it was time to see if his crazy idea would work. "All ships, begin the maneuver," he ordered. "Get us in close to the star, exactly where we planned." The human fleet dove toward the star, using its gravity to accelerate. The Council fleet followed, thinking they had the humans trapped. But as they closed in, Minho's ships began launching kinetic projectiles, not at the enemy, but into the star's gravity well at carefully calculated angles. The projectiles, simple chunks of metal and rock, were caught by the star's gravity and accelerated to incredible speeds. They whipped around the star in slingshot trajectories, coming out the other side at velocities approaching light speed. The Council fleet, pursuing the humans, flew directly into the path of thousands of these hypervelocity projectiles. The destruction was absolute. Ships that had withstood nuclear weapons and conventional attacks simply disintegrated when hit by masses traveling at such extreme speeds. The energy released was comparable to antimatter reactions. In less than 5 minutes, the entire Council offensive fleet was destroyed. "My God," Minho's tactical officer whispered, staring at the devastation. "We just weaponized a star." News of the victory spread quickly through both human and alien channels. The Council had lost an entire fleet, wiped out by what the humans called a gravity slingshot attack. It was brilliant, terrifying, and completely unexpected. The Council's military leaders began to realize they were fighting an enemy that didn't think like them, didn't fight like them, and couldn't be predicted. But the victory came at a cost. The Council, embarrassed and angry, began to fracture politically. The Valorians, still bitter about the first contact incident, pushed for total war. They wanted humanity exterminated completely, wiped from existence as a warning to any future species that dared defy the Council. Other species disagreed. The Nomari spoke openly about seeking peace. Several smaller civilizations questioned whether the Council had the moral authority to wage this war. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained unity. Now, humanity's stubborn resistance was tearing that unity apart, in a secret intelligence facility on Luna Base. Analyst Yoonjin Beek was reviewing intercepted communications when she found something that made her blood run cold. Hidden in the routine traffic was evidence of something much darker. The first contact incident, the one that had started the entire war, hadn't been an accident. "Look at these transmissions," she said to her supervisor, pulling up encrypted messages that had taken months to decode. They're dated 3 months before the horizon's edge left Earth. Someone in the galaxy knew we were coming. They deliberately kept that region off our star charts, while marking it as a restricted zone on theirs. They wanted us to stumble into that territory. Why would they do that? Her supervisor asked. To provoke exactly what happened. A violent first contact that would justify a war. Yunjin continued digging through the data, her hands shaking. Someone wanted humanity and the Council to fight. But I can't trace who sent these messages. The encryption is beyond anything the Council uses. This is someone else. Someone we haven't even met yet. She compiled her findings into a report and prepared to transmit it to Earth Command. This was bigger than the war. This was proof that humanity and the Council were both being manipulated. But as her ship prepared to jump to FTL, alarms began blaring. "Unknown vessel decloaking," the pilot shouted. "They're right on top of us." Yunjin watched helplessly as a massive ship appeared from nowhere, technology far beyond anything human or Council. It fired a single beam that disabled her ship's engines without destroying it. Then smaller craft detached, coming to board them. Who are they? The pilot asked in terror. Yunjin stared at the alien ship, her mind racing. "I don't know. But I think they're the ones who started this war. And now they know we figured it out." The boarding craft attached to their hull, cutting through like it was paper. Yunjin clutched her data chip, the evidence of the conspiracy. Whatever happened next, someone had to know the truth. Humanity and the Council weren't really enemies. They were both pawns in someone else's game. General Jisoo Kwon stood in the ruins of what had once been Mars Colony 7. The biodomes were shattered, open to the thin Martian atmosphere. Bodies lay everywhere, frozen in the moment of death. 3 million people had lived here. Now there was only silence and ice. "General, the transport is ready," her aide said quietly. "We need to get back to Earth for the briefing." Jisoo nodded but didn't move. She needed to see this. Needed to remember what war really meant. For 2 years, humanity had been winning battles, destroying Council fleets, expanding their territory. The media celebrated each victory. But victories had costs, and someone had to remember the dead. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. When she arrived at the underground command center in Geneva, Admiral Taijin and the other military leaders were waiting. But there was someone new in the room, a civilian diplomat named Yunho Co. "General Kwon, thank you for coming," Admiral Taijin said. "We have a situation. Mr. ECO has been contacted by a new player, a species we've never encountered before." Yunho stepped forward, his face troubled. 3 weeks ago, I received a communication from a species calling themselves the Chromath. They claim to be an ancient civilization from the galactic core. They say they've been watching our war with the Council, and they want to help us. "Help us how?" Jisoo asked, immediately suspicious. "With technology, weapons. They claim they can. Give us the tools to end this war in months instead of years." Yunho pulled up a holographic display, showing alien vessels, unlike anything human or Council. "They've invited us to send a delegation to meet with them, to negotiate an alliance." Jisoo studied the display. "And what do they want in return?" "That's what worries me," Yunho admitted. "They haven't said. They just keep insisting they want to help humanity reach its full potential." Admiral Taijin looked at the assembled military leaders. "We need to decide if we're going to accept this offer. Captain Seonghwa Lim will lead the delegation if we choose to go. Diplomat Jeong Go will handle negotiations." Captain Seonghwa spoke up from his position near the back of the room. "Sir, with respect, This feels like a trap. Why would an advanced species we've never heard of suddenly want to help us? Because we're winning, Jian Go said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Think about it. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace. That really means they've maintained control. Then we show up, refuse to submit, and start beating them in battle after battle. We're proving that the Council isn't invincible. That's a threat to the established order. So the Chromath see us as useful? Jisoo asked. More than useful. We're a weapon. A disruptor species that's shaking up their galaxy. Jian met Jisoo's eyes. The question is, do we want to be someone else's weapon? The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that humanity needed every advantage they could get. The Council had hundreds of thousands of ships. Earth's military, even with its recent successes, was still vastly outnumbered. Chromath technology could turn the tide completely. Others worried about the cost. What would the Chromath demand in return? What if accepting their help meant trading the Council's domination for the Chromaths? While Earth's leadership argued, the Council launched a new offensive. A massive fleet, larger than any before, struck at New Harmony Colony. Commander Jae-in Hong watched from the command center as hundreds of enemy ships appeared on his sensors. Get everyone to the shelters, he ordered his staff, and send a distress signal. We need reinforcements now. But New Harmony was far from Earth, deep in contested territory. Help would take days to arrive. The colony had maybe hours before the orbital bombardment began. Pilot Yerim Yoon, stationed at the colony's small fighter base, made the FTL call herself, her voice desperate. This is New Harmony Defense Force. We are under attack by overwhelming numbers. Request immediate assistance. If anyone can hear this, please help us. The message reached Earth just as the leadership meeting was breaking up. General Jisoo saw the reports and knew she had to make a choice. She could ask the Chromath for help, use their superweapons to save New Harmony. Or she could rely on humanity's own strength, even if it meant the colony might fall. Get me a line to Luna Base, she ordered. Dr. Soo-Young Park's team has been working on something. It's experimental, but it might be ready. Dr. Soo-Young had indeed been working on something. Humanity had learned to adapt alien technology, but they had also continued developing their own innovations. The latest was a weapon system that combined human ingenuity with desperation. We call it the Cascade Cannon, Soo-Young explained over the video link. It fires a stream of tiny projectiles, each one containing a small nuclear charge. They're designed to penetrate shields and then detonate inside enemy ships. We've only tested it in simulations. Will it work? Jisoo asked bluntly. I don't know, Soo-Young admitted. The power requirements are enormous. We can only fit one on each of our new battleships. And it takes 5 minutes to recharge between shots. Load them onto every ship that can carry one. Get them to New Harmony as fast as possible. The relief fleet arrived at New Harmony just as the Council bombardment was beginning. Commander Jae-yoon's shields were failing, and the colony's defense platforms were being systematically destroyed. Then the new human battleships appeared, bristling with the untested Cascade cannons. All ships target the lead Council vessels, the fleet commander ordered. Fire on my mark. The Cascade cannons fired, streams of tiny projectiles that looked almost harmless. But as they impacted the Council ship's shields, they began to work. Each projectile penetrated a little further before detonating, creating a cascade effect that overloaded the shields and allowed the next projectiles through. The nuclear charges detonated inside the ships, tearing them apart from within. It was brutal and efficient. The Council fleet, expecting another conventional battle, found themselves facing a weapon they had no defense against. Within an hour, they were retreating. New Harmony was saved, not by alien technology, but by human innovation. General Jizou received the report with relief and pride. "Send a message to the Chromath delegation," she ordered. "Tell them we appreciate their offer, but humanity will fight this war with our own weapons." But the Chromath response was not what she expected. Ambassador Yuno returned from the meeting looking shaken. "They weren't surprised by our decision," he told the War Council. "In fact, they seemed amused. They said humanity is developing exactly as they hoped." "What does that mean?" Admiral Taijin demanded. "They told me something else," Yuno continued. "They said they were the ones who gave us FTL technology. 20 years ago, a research station in orbit found mysterious data files in their computer systems. Files that contained the principles for faster-than-light travel. We thought it was a breakthrough by our own scientists. But the Chromath claim they planted that information." The room fell silent. "They've been manipulating us from the beginning," Jiango said slowly. "They wanted us to develop FTL. They wanted us to meet the Council. They probably engineered the first contact incident too. But why?" Jisoo asked. "What do they want from us?" "They want chaos," Yuno said. "They ruled the galaxy thousands of years ago before they withdrew to the galactic core. The Council's peace kept them locked out of the galaxy they once controlled. But if humanity destroys the Council, or even just weakens it enough, the Chromath can return." President Narration, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "So we were their weapon all along. They engineered us to fight their war for them." The revelation spread quickly through Earth's government and military. Humanity had thought they were fighting for freedom, for the right to exist among the stars. Now they learned they were pawns in a game that had started before they even left Earth. But peace talks with the Council had already begun, held on a neutral station. Representatives from both sides were meeting, exhausted by 2 years of brutal warfare. Then the explosion came. The conference station was destroyed, killing everyone aboard. Evidence pointed to human extremists who opposed peace, but intelligence officer Sujin Lee saw something wrong with the evidence. It was too perfect, too convenient. Someone wanted to sabotage the peace talks, but she didn't think it was humans. As she dug deeper, she found traces of Chromath technology at the bonding site. They were still playing both sides, still trying to keep the war going. Investigator Daeun Shin examined the wreckage of the peace conference station for the 3rd time. Something was wrong with the official story. The evidence that blamed human extremists was almost too perfect. Every piece pointed in the same direction, which in his experience meant someone wanted it to point that way. "Look at this," he said to his assistant, pulling up a scan of the bomb fragments. "The explosive residue matches human military compounds. But look at the detonator. This alloy doesn't exist in our database. It's not human. It's not Council either." His assistant leaned in to study the readings. "Could it be Chromath?" "That's what I'm thinking. But proving it is another matter." Daeun knew he was running out of time. Already, hardliners on both sides were using the bombing to justify continuing the war. If he couldn't prove the Chromath were responsible, the galaxy would tear itself apart. Meanwhile, Ambassador Yunho Seo had taken a desperate risk. Against direct orders from Earth, he had secretly traveled into Chromath space. He needed to see for himself what they were planning. Using contacts he had developed through the Nomari trader network, he managed to infiltrate one of their outer systems. What he found there made his blood run cold. Massive shipyards, larger than anything human or Council, were building a fleet. Not hundreds of ships, not thousands, tens of thousands of warships, each one equipped with technology that made current galactic standards look primitive. The Chromath had been preparing for this for decades, maybe centuries. "They're not just manipulating the war," Yunho recorded in his secret log. "They've been planning an invasion. They wanted humanity and the Council to destroy each other first, to weaken both sides. Then they would sweep in and reclaim the galaxy. We were never their allies. We were just convenient tools. Back in the war zone, Captain Ji-Hoon Kim received an unexpected communication. Commander Thalos, the Valorian whose ship's Jian had destroyed in the first contact incident, wanted to meet, alone. In neutral space, Ji-Hoon knew it was probably a trap, but he went anyway. He owed Thalos that much. When their ships met, Ji-Hoon transported over alone, unarmed. Thalos met him in a simple meeting room, and for the first time, Ji-Hoon could really see the alien. Without the aggression and fear of battle, Thalos looked tired and sad. "I did not think you would come," Thalos said through the translator. "I didn't think you would ask," Ji-Hoon replied. "You have every reason to hate me. I destroyed your ships, killed your crew, and I fired first," Thalos said quietly. "I have had 3 years to think about that moment. My gunner was nervous. Your scanning beam looked like a weapons lock to our systems. I should have waited, should have investigated, but I was arrogant. I thought you were invaders, claim jumpers. I never considered you might truly be lost." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Thalos spoke again. "I have been sent by the moderate faction of the Council. We believe the extremists are leading us to mutual destruction. The Valorians want revenge, but most species just want the war to end. We need someone the humans will listen to, and someone who can speak for both sides." "Why me?" Ji-Hoon asked. "Because you were there at the beginning. You know the truth, that this war started with a misunderstanding, not malice." Thalos leaned forward. "I have information you need to see. Intelligence about the Chromath. They are the real threat, and if we continue fighting each other, we will all fall to them." That meeting changed everything. Within days, Ambassador Yunho's data reached Earth, confirming what Thalos had shared. The Chromath were coming, and their fleet would dwarf anything humanity or the Council could field. General Jisoo Kwan looked at the projections and knew that Earth's military, even with all its innovations and victories, couldn't stop them. Neither could the Council, but together they might have a chance. President Narration made the announcement herself. "We are calling for an immediate ceasefire with the Galactic Council. We have learned that both our civilizations were manipulated into this war by a third party, the Chromath. They seek to weaken us all before their invasion. As of now, humanity proposes a military alliance to face this common threat." The Council's response came within hours. They agreed. The war that had consumed the galaxy for 3 years ended not with victory or surrender, but with a handshake between old enemies. The practicalities were complex. Human and Council forces had been trying to kill each other for so long that trust was nearly impossible. But fear of the Chromath was a powerful motivator. General Jisoo met with Council Strategos Ven to plan their joint defense. They were an odd pair, the human general who had bloodied Council fleets across multiple sectors, and the alien strategist who had planned the siege of New Harmony. But they both understood military reality. Divided, they would fall. United, they might survive. "Your kinetic weapons combined with our shield technology," Ven said, studying tactical displays. "Your boarding tactics supported by our fleet superiority. If we integrate our forces properly, we become stronger than either side alone." Engineer Jiwan Yun worked day and night with Council scientists, creating hybrid weapon systems that combined the best of both civilizations. It was strange, working alongside aliens who had been enemies just weeks before. But the Chromath threat made old animosities seem petty. "This is incredible," a Silithian engineer said, examining one of Jiwan's designs. "You found ways to optimize our energy systems that we never considered. Your approach is so different from ours." "That's because we learned to fight without your technology," Jiwan explained. We had to think creatively, use what we had. It made us good at finding simple solutions to complex problems. The Chromith fleet emerged from the galactic core 3 months after the ceasefire. 10,000 ships, just as Yunho's intelligence had predicted. They moved toward the galaxy's inhabited sectors with confidence, expecting to find a weakened, fractured civilization ready to fall. Instead, they found a united fleet waiting for them at the Barrier Nebula. Human and Council ships flying in formation, their transponders broadcasting a simple message. This galaxy stands together. The Chromith were led by Overseer Maltos, an ancient being who had watched civilizations rise and fall. He looked at the combined fleet with amusement. They think unity will save them, he told his officers. Let them learn the truth, that we are simply superior. The battle that followed was the largest in galactic history. Thousands of ships engaged across a volume of space that stretched for light years. The Chromith expected their technological superiority to carry the day. They had weapons that could destroy planets, shields that had never been breached, ships that had fought in wars before humanity even existed, but they had never fought an enemy like this before. Pilot Minjae Bay, younger brother of Yongji, who had died defending Earth, led a mixed fighter wing of human and Council craft. They had practiced the maneuver for weeks. Human fighters would fly straight at Chromith ships, drawing their fire. At the last moment, Council fighters would come in from different angles, their energy weapons targeting the spots where the Chromith shields had concentrated to stop the humans. It was coordination that required perfect timing and absolute trust. It worked beautifully. Chromith ships that had seemed invincible began to fall. Commander, Seojin sacrificed the Indomitable to destroy a Chromith planet-killer weapon that threatened to wipe out an entire star system. His crew evacuated first, but Seojin stayed aboard to manually pilot the ship on its final mission. As the Indomitable rammed into the planet-killer, triggering a catastrophic explosion, Council and human ships alike saluted his sacrifice. The tide of battle shifted when Dr. Su-Yang Park activated her final innovation. The Chromith coordinated their entire fleet through quantum entanglement, allowing instant communication across vast distances. Su-Yang had developed a weapon that disrupted quantum entanglement fields. When it fired, the Chromith fleet suddenly went dark, each ship unable to communicate with the others. Chaos erupted in the Chromith ranks. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination began colliding with each other, firing on friendly vessels, unable to tell ally from enemy without their communication network. The combined Human Council fleet pressed their advantage, isolating and destroying Chromith ships that could no longer support each other. Overseer Maltos watched his fleet crumble in disbelief. How are they doing this? We are the Elder race. We ruled this galaxy when they were still primitive creatures crawling in mud. His tactical officer had no answer. The truth was simple but devastating. The Chromith had been isolated in the galactic core for thousands of years, fighting no one, facing no challenges. Meanwhile, humanity and the Council had been locked in brutal warfare that forced both sides to innovate constantly. The war the Chromith had engineered had made their enemies stronger instead of weaker. The Chromith fleet broke and ran, retreating back toward the galactic core. The combined fleet pursued them all the way to the barrier region and established a permanent blockade. The Chromith were sealed in their own territory. Unable to threaten the galaxy again, out in the aftermath, Maltos was captured trying to escape in a small craft. He was brought before a council of human and alien leaders. President Narration looked at him with contempt. You tried to use us as a weapon. You thought humanity's aggression would destroy the council for you. Maltos sneered, even in defeat. You are aggressive. That is what made you useful. Captain Ji-hoon stepped forward. You're wrong about us. You saw humans fight desperately to survive and mistook.